Former U.S. President Donald Trump continues to dominate the American political landscape as he maneuvers through a whirlwind of legal battles, campaign rallies, and high-profile media appearances. In recent months, Trump has intensified his criticism of the Biden administration, focusing on issues such as inflation, immigration, foreign policy, and what he describes as the decline of American strength on the global stage. His speeches are often marked by fiery rhetoric, drawing both strong support and sharp opposition. At his rallies, Trump frames himself as the champion of the forgotten American, while portraying his rivals as part of a corrupt establishment working against the people's interests. Analysts note that despite his ongoing legal troubles, Trump's popularity within the Republican Party has remained resilient, with polls consistently showing him as the front-runner for the GOP nomination in 2024. His ability to galvanize large crowds and dominate media coverage has made him not only a political figure but also a cultural force, shaping debates far beyond party lines. Trump's continued relevance reflects the deep polarization in American society, where his supporters view him as a savior figure fighting entrenched elites, while his critics warn of the dangers posed by his confrontational style and refusal to accept conventional political norms. The legal challenges Trump faces, however, are unprecedented for a former president, and they have become a defining feature of his political narrative. From investigations into classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago, to civil fraud trials concerning the Trump Organization's business dealings, and even criminal indictments connected to attempts to overturn the 2020 election results, Trump has been at the center of multiple courtroom dramas. His legal team consistently argues that the cases are politically motivated, designed to derail his campaign and tarnish his legacy, while prosecutors maintain that no individual is above the law. These cases have created a historic test for the U.S. judicial system, as courts weigh the accountability of a former president against the nation's democratic principles. Supporters flock to courthouses where Trump makes appearances, waving flags and chanting slogans of loyalty, while opponents see his indictments as a long overdue reckoning. The outcome of these trials could have far-reaching consequences not only for Trump's political future but also for the perception of justice in the United States. Some legal experts argue that if Trump were to win the presidency again, the cases could trigger constitutional crises, especially if he attempts to dismiss or undermine ongoing investigations. Meanwhile, Trump's campaign strategy has leaned heavily on the narrative of victimhood and resilience, themes that resonate strongly with his base. He presents himself as a leader persecuted for daring to challenge the establishment, often invoking religious imagery, patriotism, and nostalgia for what he describes as America's better days under his leadership. His rallies have grown into multimedia spectacles, complete with music, chants, and elaborate staging that resemble entertainment events as much as political gatherings. Social media remains a powerful tool for him, with platforms amplifying his messages far beyond traditional campaign methods. Analysts have pointed out that Trump has successfully created a parallel media ecosystem, where conservative outlets, influencers, and grassroots networks spread his narrative with little reliance on mainstream journalism. His campaign has also invested in targeting swing states, focusing particularly on issues that appeal to working-class voters, such as energy independence, job security, and border security. Critics argue that this approach oversimplifies complex policy challenges, but Trump's ability to communicate in straightforward, emotional language gives him a unique advantage in connecting with voters who feel alienated by Washington elites. On the international stage, Trump's influence continues to be felt, as allies and adversaries alike watch closely for signs of his potential return to power. World leaders recall his unorthodox approach to diplomacy, from his summit meetings with North Korea's Kim Jong-un to his confrontational stance toward NATO allies and trade partners. Supporters argue that his America First policy restored respect and assertiveness to U.S. foreign policy, forcing other nations to shoulder more responsibility, while critics warn that his unpredictability weakened alliances and emboldened rivals such as Russia and China. As conflicts in Eastern Europe and the Middle East intensify, Trump uses these global crises to contrast his presidency with the current administration, claiming that such instability would not have occurred under his leadership. He also continues to shape Republican views on foreign policy, advocating for reduced military involvement abroad while pushing for stronger economic leverage against adversaries. Regardless of the eventual outcome of his campaign, Trump's imprint on American politics is undeniable. He has transformed the Republican Party into a movement centered on his persona, reshaped the national conversation on democracy and governance, and positioned himself as one of the most consequential figures in modern U.S. history, whether admired or reviled. Within the Republican Party, Trump has cemented his position as the defining figure, shaping its policies, tone, and future trajectory. Party leaders who once opposed him have either retired, shifted to his camp, or face constant pressure from their voter base to align with his vision. The transformation is visible in the GOP's platform, which now emphasizes themes closely tied to Trump's rhetoric: stricter border controls, skepticism of global institutions, rejection of progressive cultural movements, and an embrace of nationalist economic policies. This evolution has created friction between traditional conservatives who prioritize limited government and fiscal restraint, and Trump-aligned populists who emphasize loyalty, identity, and grievance-driven politics. In many state primaries, Trump's endorsements have proven decisive, often determining the fate of candidates regardless of their political experience. Critics warn that this loyalty test threatens the party's ability to build coalitions beyond its base, while supporters believe it ensures ideological purity and a stronger, more energized movement. The result is a Republican Party that reflects not just conservative principles but also Trump's personal brand of politics, where individual allegiance often outweighs traditional policymaking. Voter behavior in the Trump era reveals the extent of his cultural and political influence. His base, often described as unshakable, includes working-class Americans, rural communities, evangelical Christians, and disaffected voters who feel left behind by globalization and cultural shifts. Trump's message of restoring dignity, jobs, and security resonates with these groups in a way few other politicians have managed. Political scientists note that his supporters are less swayed by policy details and more motivated by identity, emotion, and a sense of shared struggle. This creates a dynamic where scandals or legal setbacks that might cripple other politicians often reinforce Trump's narrative of persecution, strengthening rather than weakening his standing. On the other hand, suburban voters, younger Americans, and minority communities remain largely skeptical or opposed to Trump, creating a stark generational and cultural divide across the electorate. This polarization has hardened over the years, leaving little room for compromise or persuasion. The question facing the 2024 election, and potentially beyond, is whether Trump's coalition can expand enough to secure a national majority, or if the structural opposition to his candidacy will limit his ceiling despite his dominance within the GOP. Media coverage has been central to Trump's rise and sustained presence in American life, often blurring the lines between news, entertainment, and politics. His mastery of headlines, soundbites, and social media has forced traditional outlets to cover him extensively, even when the tone is critical. Trump has repeatedly clashed with the mainstream press, branding it fake news and positioning himself as a direct source of truth to his supporters. This antagonistic relationship has had long-lasting consequences for public trust in media institutions, with surveys showing deep partisan divides and perceptions of journalistic credibility. Meanwhile, conservative outlets such as Fox News, Newsmax, and a range of online platforms have created an alternative ecosystem where Trump's message is amplified, often unchecked by fact-checking or editorial constraints. This dual media environment has entrenched political silos, where citizens consume news that reinforces their worldview, further deepening polarization. At the same time, Trump's reliance on rallies, viral clips, and memes reflects his understanding of politics as performance, where visibility and emotional impact often matter more than policy detail. Scholars argue that this style has reshaped the standards of political communication, influencing not only Republicans but also Democrats and independents in how they engage with public discourse. Beyond domestic politics, Trump's impact on the American democratic system remains one of the most contested issues of the modern era. His refusal to accept the results of the 2020 election, coupled with efforts to overturn state certifications and the January 6 Capitol riot, have sparked debates about the resilience of U.S. institutions.